Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
In the landscape of early 21st century scholarship, few works have so profoundly reshaped our understanding of the interface between science, policy, and public perception as Naomi, Oreskes and Oreskes, Conway's 2010 masterpiece, Merchants of Doubt. While its title evokes a shadowy cabal of clandestine actors, the book's true power lies in its meticulous, almost forensic, dissection of a remarkably public and surprisingly small group of individuals who successfully sowed uncertainty about established scientific truths. Oreskes and Conway perform an intellectual autopsy on the corpse of public consensus, revealing that its demise was a deliberate act, orchestrated with the precision of a political campaign and the funding of powerful industrial interests. This essay will explore the genesis of their landmark study, delineate its central thesis and methodological rigor, and trace its enduring legacy as a foundational text for comprehending the modern architecture of organized denial. It is a work whose insights extend far beyond the specific case of climate change, offering a chillingly relevant playbook for how scientific knowledge can be systematically undermined in the service of ideology and profit. The intellectual ground from which Merchants of Doubt sprang was fertile, prepared by decades of scholarship in the history and sociology of science. The field had long moved past a simplistic view of scientific progress as a linear march toward truth. Thinkers within science and technology studies had demonstrated how social, political, and economic forces shape the production and reception of knowledge. A crucial precursor was the extensive historical work on the tobacco industry's campaign to obscure the link between smoking and cancer. Historians like Robert Proctor had unearthed a treasure trove of internal documents that detailed a conscious, well-funded strategy to manufacture doubt, create controversy where there was none, and challenge the very authority of the scientific enterprise. This tobacco strategy became the archetype, the original sin of modern corporate disinformation. Oreskes, historian of science with a background in geology, had herself laid vital groundwork with her 2004 essay in the journal Science, titled The Scientific Consensus on Climate Change. In that brief but explosive piece, she demonstrated a complete consensus within the peer-reviewed literature on the reality of anthropogenic global warming, a finding starkly at odds with the portrayal of a vigorous debate in the popular media. The chasm between scientific reality and public perception begged for a historical explanation, a mystery that Merchants of Doubt would ultimately solve. The book emerged from a desire to understand this disconnect, to move from quantifying the consensus to narrating the history of its deliberate dismantling. At its core, Merchants of Doubt advances a powerful and deeply evident thesis that the same handful of high-level, politically conservative scientists, abetted by free market think tanks and corporations, applied the tobacco industry's public relations tactics to a succession of environmental and public health issues. The book is structured as a series of compelling case studies, each chapter tackling a different scientific front, from the dangers of second-hand smoke to the reality of acid rain, the ozone hole, and, as the grand finale, the climate crisis. A narrative thread connecting these disparate issues is a consistent cast of characters, most prominently the physicists Frederick Seitz, Fred Singer and William Nierenberg. These were men of considerable scientific stature, veterans of the Cold War who had built their careers within the military-industrial complex. A prestige lent an air of credibility to their contrarian positions. Oreskes and Conway argue their motives were less financial than ideological. Forged in the crucible of the Cold War, they viewed environmental regulations as a slippery slope towards socialism and a threat to American freedom and industrial might. Environmentalism was, in their worldview, a green Trojan horse for red communism. The methodology employed by Oreskes and Conway is a masterclass in historical investigation. They delved into vast archives of personal papers, industry documents, and the internal records of conservative think tanks like the George C. Marshall Institute, which Seitz and Nierenberg helped found. The authors reveal a systematic strategy. First, celebrate uncertainty. Science is an ongoing process of inquiry, and absolute certainty is a rare commodity. These Merchants of Doubt exploited this feature of the scientific method, magnifying normal uncertainties into cavernous gaps of ignorance. Second, attack the scientists. They employed ad hominem attacks questioning the motives, integrity, and even the patriotism of mainstream researchers. Third, create the illusion of a scientific debate by funding a few contrarian scientists and promoting them. Through sympathetic media outlets and congressional testimony, they could present a balanced controversy to a public ill-equipped to evaluate the relative weight of the evidence. They pioneered the tactic of demand in equal time, for minority views, a principle of journalistic fairness, and becomes a tool of profound distortion when one side represents an overwhelming scientific consensus and the other represents a fringe opinion funded by vested interests. The genius of Oreskes and Conway's work is showing this was a consistent, repeatable, and exportable strategy. A dark art passed from one campaign to the book's reception and immediate impact were enormous. Published in 2010, it landed at a moment of intense political polarization over climate policy. It provided a clear, compelling, and historically grounded narrative that explained the source of the public confusion. For scientists, journalists, and policymakers who had long been frustrated by the seemingly irrational resistance to overwhelming evidence, the book was a revelation. It armed them with a history and a vocabulary to describe what they were up against. The phrase merchants of doubt entered the public lexicon as shorthand for the industry of manufactured ignorance. The book's influence was amplified considerably by the 2014 documentary film of the same name, which brought Oreskes and Conway's meticulous research to a much broader audience. The work shifted the conversation from a debate over climatological data points, like the behavior of tree rings or ice cores, to a discussion of the political and economic forces actively corrupting the process of public deliberation. It became less a scientific argument and more a story of democratic subversion. In the years following its publication, the analytical framework of merchants of doubt has proven remarkably durable and adaptable. Scholars in communications, sociology, and political science have employed its model to analyze disinformation campaigns in entirely different domains. The tactics of doubt-mongering, cherry-picking data, and promoting credentialed contrarians have been identified in debates over the safety of vaccines, the efficacy of public health measures during pandemics, and nutritional science. The book provided a grammar for deconstructing modern propaganda. It demonstrated that the goal of these campaigns is often a simple delay of regulatory action. By manufacturing a debate and paralyzing the political process, industries can secure decades of continued profits, pushing the costs of their activities onto future generations. Subsequent research has built upon Oreskes and Conway's foundation, further detailing the intricate funding networks that connect corporate donors to think tanks and contrarian scientists, creating a veritable ecosystem of denial. The book remains a cornerstone of curricula in environmental studies, public policy, and the history of science, essential reading for anyone seeking to understand the contested nature of truth in the 21st century. Of course, a work of such influence and pointed critique could hardly escape criticism itself. The primary objections came, predictably, from the very individuals and institutions the book profiles. They accused Oreskes and Conway of bias, of constructing a conspiratorial narrative, and of misrepresenting the noble intentions of scientists who were merely exercising their skeptical duty. One might observe a certain irony in these critiques, as they often employed the very tactics of attacking the messenger and questioning motives that the book itself so brilliantly exposes. These objections, however, found little purchase in the broader academic community, which recognized the depth of the author's archival research and the powerful explanatory force of their thesis. Oreskes and Conway's conclusions were too extensively documented to be dismissed as mere polemic. While historians may continue to debate the precise weighting of ideological versus financial motivations for figures like Seitz and Singer, the overall historical pattern they uncovered a coordinated, multi-decade campaign to undermine science for political and economic ends now widely accepted as a crucial chapter in recent American history. The influence of merchants of doubt extends to the work of specific individuals and the direction of entire fields. It has empowered a new generation of investigative environmental journalists who now look beyond the science to the political economy of its reception. The work of scholars examining the role of astroturfing, the creation of fake grassroots movements, and the weaponization of social media to spread disinformation owes an intellectual debt to the foundational patterns Oreskes and Conway identified in an earlier, analog era. The book has also had a profound effect on the scientific community itself, encouraging scientists to become more savvy communicators and more willing to engage directly in the public sphere to defend their work from organized attacks. It highlighted the naivete of believing that good data alone will carry the day in a political contest. It taught them that the communication of science is as critical as its production. In conclusion, Naomi Oreskes and Eric M. Conway's Merchants of Doubt stands as a monumental work of historical scholarship. It is more than a history of climate denial. It is a definitive account of the corruption of public discourse by a powerful alliance of ideological conviction and corporate self-interest. Through painstaking research and lucid prose, the authors exposed the machinery of manufactured ignorance, providing an indispensable guide to the political struggles that define our time. They revealed that the persistent debate over issues settled long ago within the scientific community was the product of a deliberate and well-funded public relations strategy. The book's true and lasting legacy is epistemological. It is a profound meditation on the vulnerability of an open society to the systematic manipulation of information. It teaches us that the preservation of a fact-based reality requires constant vigilance and a clear-eyed understanding of the forces that seek to obscure it. In an age of rampant disinformation, Merchants of Doubt is more than a history, it is a survival manual.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.